7 years ago, I started practicing movement without realizing how deep I was about to dive. I couldn't handstand, rest and squat, or balance on a rail, and I often had back pain. What I found was that movement wasn't just exercise. It was a way to understand my body. It was a practice to observe myself and a way of life. This is where I started 7 years ago, and what 7 years of practice can do. The video tells a story, but I wish you could know how it feels. The resting squat took me years to build. As you can see, I struggled to get depth early on. The key is to start where you can, hips as low as possible, and hold for time. You can always elevate the heels, or hold onto a sturdy object in front of you. The ligaments and tendons in the wrists have also taken me years to strengthen. The key is to start light and on soft surfaces, gradually increasing load by lifting the knees from the ground and shifting the shoulders forward. Coordination is whole body connection. You can start with only the legs, or only the arms, or only the spine, but ultimately, connecting them all shows up in everything. Before entering practice, I didn't realize how my spine only moved in a few ways: flexed, extended, or rotated, if that. Differentiating the spine and exploring its full range of possibilities through sequential waves, spirals, and circles in all planes of motion offers much needed nutrition to the spine. It's a great way to softly awaken the body, sharpen attention, and experience a clear difference between what is the spine versus parts of the body connected to it. While my elbow still doesn't reach my toe, going down the path has greatly helped my back and opened up the whole posterior side of my body, which is useful for compression. The pancake helps build compression strength through a forward pelvic tilt and keeping a neutral spine. Since starting years ago, mine has improved, but I've chosen to go other directions for now. I find that not all patterns are created equal. The diagonal stretch loads and strengthens the front side of the body, while an extension and rotation. It's been great for my hips and back. It also helps build balance and split stance, forming a line of connection unlike any other pattern. The basic bridge opens up my thoracic spine, rib cage, and aids in shoulder flexion. Mine isn't great, but it's greatly improved. While the traditional bridge is static, adding rotational movement to the shape allows us to include and transcend the previous layer. I noticed one of the main details in my earliest practice videos is rushing. By slowing down, I can start to sense what I'm missing and feel a greater connection throughout. During the bridge pull, we pull off the wall not with the feet, but with the hands by shifting the shoulders forward. With a proper handstand, this ultimately builds into a Mexican handstand, finding the similar arch shape while balanced. The QDR mimics the diagonal stretch in a way. It's a similar shape in the body, extension through the spine, but balanced in the hands. The QDR switch scissors then splits the legs, turning the body, allowing our hips to travel from one elbow to the other. This one took me forever to learn. and could still use a bit of cleaning up. Connecting the previous patterns, bridge to QDR exit. It's an example of how isolated movements, after a lot of practice, can integrate together to form something greater. It goes to show that nothing lives in isolation, that nothing is disconnected from the whole, and with a bit of creativity, there's always something new to discover. The splits attract many due to their aesthetic quality. I haven't valued that so much myself, so I haven't progressed very far in the middle split. Such is the case with little practice, but it's enough range for me, for right now, for straddle work and dynamic options. The planche is a straight arm push strength pattern. It's well known to gymnasts, but unknown to many gym goers. Starting with banded assistance helps us build the initial layers. Eventually, we can ditch the band, find assistance with the toes, and then nothing at all. The scapula is depressed and protracted. The spine is flexed. If you're approaching this for the first time, remain patient. It will take months to develop, and more advanced patterns, years. The spine in the lever mirrors that of the planche, but here the scapula retracts. The rings offer the variable of instability, allowing that stability to instead show up in the body. Begin with a tucked leg variation, knees into chest. From there, you can increase the lever angle over time. The muscle up is a skill that came easy for me, or at least what I thought was a muscle up. My early attempts demonstrate what it's like to check the box, but to skip stages. Where before, you might have seen a flinging, elastic energy needed to reach above the rings, now there's a smooth, even connection. This is the search for quality. Now that we're above the rings, this allows for entire ring routines to be built, offering us pull and push strength with both straight arms and bent arms. So many skills like these lower body strength patterns are built on what I would call just doing what you can. This is like beating your head against the wall, and eventually you will smash through. Repeated attempts can help you arrive, but there's usually also a faster process that's available. An intelligent process based on prerequisite patterns that build into the next phase. The handstand is a strong attractor to movement practice for many people. I never cared much about it until I saw its connection to soft acrobatics. Only then did I start to connect the dots. I see many practitioners get stuck here, developing a handstand and building an identity around one skill or one part of the body. Ultimately, we must all get stuck somewhere, building identities in order to survive. If you haven't gotten a 60-second handstand, it's a fruitful path that makes me realize why people stay. The handstand is a better stop along the road than most. For me, I find my way is to hop back onto the train and keep riding it forward. The handstand press has been one of the most elusive skills for my body type and previous conditioning. The combination of compression strength, straight arm overhead push, the handstand, and coordinating the spine exposed me beyond belief. It became a perfect concoction of all my limitations. Thankfully, we have practice. Through addressing various patterns and weak links, a press eventually arises on its own schedule. The best we can do is set the conditions for success. At so many different points in time, I thought I was so close to getting my first press, only to realize I was still months or years away. Be patient and keep practicing. Press negatives played a large part in the journey, as did weighted Jefferson curls, press potentiation drills, and as I mentioned, patience. Even though I can do it, it still needs a lot of cleaning up. The handstand push-up begins with humble patterns. Elevated feet, pike push-ups, feet up the wall, head touching to an object. This is one skill where it's helpful not to pass go without collecting your $100. Otherwise, you'll likely start to build bad habits. It's said that practice doesn't make perfect, it makes permanent. Attempt to keep a hollow body, bent elbows stacked over wrists, legs together, and eventually the connection gets built. I notice many people say something like, "You must be really strong in order to do that." But after a while, it actually feels more like coordination than strength. The strength then comes from repetitions of the skill, conditioning ourselves into more coordination. The crawl was one of the main movements that brought me into practice. If you want to improve your crawl, try starting with your attention. Be present fully, lifting and landing opposite limbs at the same time. Keep the knees low and hips parallel to the ground. They'll have a tendency to rise up. That's not wrong, just be aware of what you're trying to do. Initial attempts at the lizard crawl are likely to be confusing and effortful. That's okay. That's exactly where we start. We begin with the high lizard, next the lizard push-up, and gradually move to the low lizard and all its variations. The feet can cross under and over, they can switch. Each option offers an organic approach to push strength and feeds our creativity. It's a non-linear pattern that challenges us in new ways. Where linear push strength and push-ups might not scratch that inspiring itch to practice, try the lizard and watch what happens. The lower body for many can remain strong but immobile. The step behind prompts the legs to be both. Through drop stance and rotational capabilities, it serves as both a whole and a part to something greater. Inspired by capoeira, the rolé is one of the most foundational patterns of ground movement. It teaches us how to shift weight into the hands while keeping the feet nearly weightless. Like any other pattern, improvements in quality come from knowing what's happening, understanding subtle cues, sensing the body as a whole, and many repetitions. The au is a lateral bent knee cartwheel from squat. Weight shifts into the hands, hips come over top. Gaze remains forward if possible. The landing replicates the entry, returning back to squat. My early practice of locomotion was mostly a top-down process. By top-down, I mean that the learning began with ideas, thoughts, and specific patterns to mimic. An example of top-down movement is connecting the roulé to the yaou, to the step through, to the ape crawl. During this top-down process, I built my vocabulary with ground possibilities, including QDR options, rolls, animal crawls, and well-known movement patterns. Later on in practice, thanks to the guidance of my teacher, we moved more toward a bottom-up process, meaning that instead of moving from ideas, sequencing one known pattern into another, we moved from sensation. In bottom-up movement, you feel the body moving in space rather than predicting in the mind, next I will do the yaou. This creates what could be called gray movements, strange, blurry, undefined patterns that might look like something else, but aren't exactly. You could give these patterns names, but they weren't arrived at with naming. They were arrived at through weight shifting, by lifting and placing one or two limbs at a time, and shifting weight into those limbs. The combination of both top-down and bottom-up patterns creates rich complexity and endless material to observe our habits, patterns, and conditions. In all of these chapters, I suggest you go back and simply watch the change that occurs without my voice. Do you notice any differences from the first clip in each section, which are mostly from 7 years ago, to the most recent clip? What do you see? I can talk a lot, but this is what matters most. Locomotion has become one of my favorite containers for practice. There's incredible depth to these movements, and so many other containers that connect to it. I start others with the roulé, the yaou, and the crawl. The chapeau can begin with a simple leg tie. This is me many years ago starting from that option. Eventually, we can attempt the full pattern. A kick from the floor onto the feet, either rotational or to the side, providing a nice transition from floor to standing. It's one of the most fun dynamic patterns to perform. It requires hip extension, separation of the legs, and a light push from the hand. Floor work is the poor man's massage. It provides an opportunity for us to move while releasing tensions. This container seems totally unflashy, especially the initial layers, but it's become one of my most valued parts of practice. It's the perfect connection between somatic work and dance. It actually feels like I've walked out of a massage that was far better than the end of a yoga session or a massage. Like locomotion, there are many isolated patterns to learn. Chest rolls, backwards and forwards rolls, projections, slides, floor entries, the list goes on. The feedback the floor gives the body exposes the tensions we hold and shows us where we need to soften in order to meet the hard floor. If we're unable to soften, especially at first, you might find soreness or pain points arising. This tells us exactly the spots to release into. With some practice, even the flashier skills can show up with ease. The forearm chest roll is where we start. The third clip in this section demonstrates it. Try to relax the head and neck as much as possible as you roll from back to front. Everyone knows how to jump, but few know the mechanics behind jumping. Once these mechanics are understood, jumping can begin to feel lighter, easier, and effortless. Each of the jumping mechanics can be practiced individually in parts, then connected into a whole. The loading, the extension, the second phase of loading, the takeoff, and the landing. Each have distinctive characteristics, applying across broad jumps and vertical jumps. The chablon hones footwork while synchronizing the upper body alongside it. 1 foot goes in the small squares, 2 feet in the larger rectangles. You can see here I'm still making quite a few mistakes, so clean it up to the best of your abilities and slow it down if needed. Stick balance has offered me more moments of existential questioning than any other container of practice. There's nothing like trying to balance a stick on your shoulder for 1 minute straight, failing after half a second, and then questioning your life decisions while setting up for another attempt. It's prompted deep investigations into why I practice. Since it's not immediately apparent how stick balance shows up in other realms of life, I can say it teaches patience, sensitivity, and attention, all qualities that we need more than ever in today's society. While it seems simple enough to balance a stick on the fingertips, can you do so without taking steps in space? Here is where the investigation begins. Once there's some level of embodiment, we add complexity to the drill by bringing the stick more proximal to the body. These types of adjustments ensure we are always challenged, always growing, and always learning. To wall box is to endure hours of potential frustration, showing us where we need to grow, both physically and mentally. For me, it teaches touch, accuracy, hand-eye coordination, and mental fortitude. There's a process for everything and an entry point for anyone. I came into practice with basic 3-ball juggling abilities. Even still, 2 balls with columns, inside and outside, remained enough of a challenge to want to explore deeper. 3 balls felt easy compared to 2-ball variations. More recently, box juggling is the new frontier to test the edge of my abilities. Juggling a soccer ball proved an infinitely harder task. I was never much of a soccer player. That conditioning shows up in everything I do. Coordinating the feet in this way offered something deeply satisfying and rewarding. Just the act of kicking the ball upward felt like it was healing my joints, ligaments, and tendons in the legs. It's funny to look back at some of my older videos and see just how much tension I have in the upper body. The arms, the hands, the shoulders, they're all trying to help out with the pattern. Unfortunately, this work is for the legs. I remember feeling some significant adaptations to the structure of my body when I first started rail work, especially the knees, ankles, and feet. I could feel that unilateral balancing was healing the weak links in my lower body as it became more stable in real time, or perhaps better able to manage instability. There's many entries to allow yourself to mount atop the rail, some more difficult than others, but they all make for interesting puzzles to solve. Next comes stepping, the fears of heights, falling, injury, all arising in the span of milliseconds. With practice, the body learns how to exit gracefully. There are rails everywhere in the city, which makes it a unique practice to bring life to the urban environment. You start to see the world as a playground, noticing rails, steps, and walls all as potential locations for expression. The seated 360 spin is one of my favorites. It feels incredible on my hamstrings and glutes. The pressure of the rail pressing into the backs of my legs always releases some health tensions in my body. The cartwheel is the foundation of soft acrobatics, and everyone thinks they can do a cartwheel, so why bother? Our answer is buried in the question itself. Why? Let's investigate. I find the more I practice, the more I realize I don't know. As you can see early on, I can do a cartwheel, more or less. But in later clips, you'll see that some change has occurred. This is thanks to targeted cues, improvement in bodily awareness, and practice. Bruce Lee said, "I fear not the man who has practiced 10,000 kicks once, but I fear the man who has practiced one kick 10,000 times." Just a few cartwheels will give you all the results you seek. I say this because in many of these containers, the options are infinite, so better to limit them for our own good. Ipsy cartwheels, contra cartwheels, bent arm, bent knee, organic kick-ups. These are some of the starting points to refine before moving on to endless options. Once you understand the principles and feel them embodied, you can add more to your arsenal. Until then, connect the dots with what you have and what came before moving on too quickly. It's through connecting pieces together that we learn the essence. It may not seem like anything is happening at first, but after years, quality begins to refine, and the little details add up. One cue: try exiting the cartwheel the same way you entered. Kicking is the leading edge of my current practice. It's still new and exciting to me. Much like cartwheels, I thought I knew how to kick, but it turns out that if you try doing something yourself and film it, there's still quite a bit to learn. Kicking begins with one-legged balance and leg swings, generating force through the kicking leg. The weight shift from one leg to another comes later. It's simple, but much harder than it looks. Once balance is built, we can start mapping new layers, which are at first subtle and grow in size and force later on. I have a newfound respect for martial artists in this way. Kicking has an artistic beauty to it at the highest levels, and I want to keep going deeper in this direction. It's helped me with balance, problem solving, and opening my hips. While many practices only strengthen the legs through static or tensile methods, kicking offers an elastic and dynamic quality worthy of exploration. What you're seeing here is fairly recent work, within the last couple of months. A lot can change during 60 days. I can already see some cues I would give to this work, including finishing these kicks with more of a contra orientation, trying to reduce spin out, and keeping the leg held higher for longer. The kip up and stots represent a couple of fun dynamic abilities that took me a while to learn. I can't tell you how many times I slammed my back against the floor trying to kip up. The stot shows us what it's like to use the spine as our engine. It's pretty funny to me to look back at some of my old tactical and martial work videos. It felt so foreign to me at first, as you can see. I was never a fighter, so learning the foundations took me years. I've only found some form of connectivity recently, thanks to a guided process and frequent feedback. At least I now look somewhat coordinated. The work continues to challenge my fears, reactions, abilities, and sometimes my nose structure. The tendency is to want to get straight to the fighting. Instead, we spend time developing footwork, stances, and proper positioning of the spine and hips. With these efforts laid as our foundation, we move better as we add more complexity. Keeping to its namesake, it's debatable that practicing movement quality has had the biggest impact on the quality of my movement. That sounds silly, but this transformation is noticeable over time. There are so many extremely subtle cues that aid in development. Exploring water and air quality in various lines and circles helps unite the body as one. Once you know where the motion is led from, you can find the sequential nature of what naturally wants to unfold. The key is to move slow and sense as clearly as possible. There's nowhere to arrive at, only a search to engage with. If you made it to the end of this video, thank you so much for watching. You could have spent your time and attention in a million other places, so thank you for spending it here with me. If this movement journey inspired you at all to want to get started on your own, reach out to me. I'd love to help. I look forward to hearing from you. Cheers.